And I've restarted the recording, so welcome to the CIS 117 Hangout. And I'll go ahead and drop our 107 materials because we're done with that. That's also a database class, so if you haven't taken it, you should. And if you have taken it, shh, don't give me away. Pretend it was good. All right, and let's go take a look at the week 3 materials for the CIS 117 course. All right, so this is our week 3 assignment. We're doing some queries on the CIS 117 database, and we're going to be getting into some aggregate functions. So we're going to be exploring the count, tells us how many, and we're going to be doing some additional filtering. So I see cost each item whose price is less than or equal to. So we're going to be using some comparison operators, and we're going to do more aggregation with sum as well as count. And then we'll be doing some aggregate expressions with the group by. So Casey and Carl, let me check in with you. Carl, I see you got yourself muted. I'm going to unmute you for a minute. Is everybody hearing okay? And do you guys have questions for me?
Yeah, I hear you all right. I do have a question. I was working on question number 13, and it says format a calculated field as currency, and I was having some difficulty with it.
Well, then let's do that.
Okay.
Yeah, let's build that. Okay, so I'm working off my local machine. I didn't launch my cloud time in advance this evening, so I'm just going to bring up my services, and then I'm going to come down here to my SQL Server 117 service. I don't leave them running all the time on my local machine because why burn horsepower when I don't need to? So we'll start that up. Ordinarily, if you're using cloud time, it will be started for you every time the machine starts. If you do get a situation where you go to connect and you're not getting a connection through your SQL Server Management Studio, then bringing up the services console and taking a look to see if the service is running is your number one thing to look at. Okay, so I've got the service running, and let's bring up the SQL Server Management Studio. Oh, you know what? I've uninstalled 14 because we're now using 17. I'm actually using 17 down here, but I think I deployed 16 to everybody in the cloud when I was doing the prep for this class. 17 wasn't yet in production release, and I didn't want you to have to wade through any beta release problems. For this class, it's not really that important that we have the absolute latest and greatest. Most of the things we're studying haven't changed in years and aren't likely to change anytime soon. It's when you get into some of the cutting edge features that they're just adding in a more advanced SQL programming class that will need some of that. Okay, so here are our databases. We're going to be working with CIS 117 DB. Let's start a new query. And here's our use CIS 117 DB. There's your semicolon that you were asking about, Ted. But you'll notice that I can, in SQL Server, select star from, and let's pick a table here, probably the customer table. And let's leave that semicolon off, and it works just fine without the semicolon. As a matter of fact, even if I have a separate batch, if it is not spawning separate threads, it probably continues to run just fine, even though the semicolon was omitted there or omitted there. If you go try that, if you wanted to see one that would fail, if you really want to explore this further, if you go and open the query files that are the query scripts that build the database, where actually they run several batches because they build tables, then they insert data. Obviously, you need the batch that creates the table to finish before it can add the data to the table, right? You can't, drive the car down the road if the road hasn't been paved yet. Okay, so if you start playing around removing the semicolons from those batches, you'll see some failures. It'll just this object was not available, or this table was locked, or object does not exist, and that's because SQL Server is actually multi-threaded. What that means, if you got one of these lovely modern multi-core processors or hyper-threaded processors that works essentially like it has multiple cores, it's going to it's like two programs running at once. And that's really efficient. Boy, that's really using the horsepower of your computer much more efficiently. But again, some things are timing dependent. You want to make sure that this job has finished. Again, we can't drive the car down the road if the road hasn't been paved. We can't populate a table if the table hasn't been built. So if we run batches simultaneously and the parser's just flying through and throwing things at the database engine that's multi-threaded, it needs to be told, hey, wait till this batch is. And so you'll see what they'll do is they'll have the semicolons in the batch, and a lot of those scripts you'll see a go command, which says now explicitly go start the next thread. So some of that kind of stuff. Yeah. Best way to really learn that is to explore it. All right, back to, was it Casey's question? I think we're working on Casey's question. Okay, and let me slide that up here for just a second. So you were number 13. The vice president of marketing is considering Midnight Madness, cost was 15, sale for 1 hour. Okay, so we're working on items table, the unit price, and we want to format as currency. So I always like to start my work with a select star. So here's our items table. Okay, and then let's look a little bit further. What do we need from the items table? We need to take the cost, and the cost is going to be whatever the cost is plus 15%, only it's not cost. So we're going to add a new field here, and whatever that field is, we're going to give it a name as cost, single quotes, cost plus 15%. Now I need an expression here. What is this XXX going to be? It's going to be my cost. And there's two equivalent ways to do this. One is we could say cost plus cost times 0.15, right? But if you think about that, isn't this the same as saying 1.00 times cost plus 0.15 times cost? And if we combine like terms, remember that from algebra, it's 1.15 times cost is 115% is the same as saying cost plus 15. I like that way better. It's a little more compact. Okay, let's run this and see if it's giving us what we want. There's my new field. Here's the star, all the other fields. Does that look, let's sanity check it. Learn to sanity check your work. So if I have something that was $7 and I add 15%, 7 times 10 would be 70%, half of much again would be about 805, and this comes out to 807. So eyeballing it, yeah, that looks like it's doing the right calculation. Now, you can't always eyeball and get it right, but more often than not, it'll keep you out of the weeds if you take a moment to just visually sanity check your work. Now we need to get it at Casey's problem. We need this expression to be formatted for currency. Let's take a look back. Did we have any kind of clue in this assignment for formatting for currency? Okay, and calculated field in the following functions, format your calculation here as C for currency, ENUS. I'm going to come
It's
in
number
here.
13.
I know, but see, if you did these in order, you were introduced to the format function that formats as currency.
Mm.
Are you one of those, Casey, that likes to skip around?
I think so.
Okay, I'll go away. There we go. All right, so I'm going to take that expression and put in there, and I'm going to take my calculation. I'm going to cut it, and I'm hitting Shift Delete, and I'm going to come over here where it says your calculation here, and I'm going to hit Control V to paste it in. And now, if I've done that correctly, it should take this expression after it is calculated, whatever the value is, should be formatted as currency for English US. Okay, and the reason that it has that is you actually have different symbol pages. So won, baht, rubles. It's very multinational. So we can localize our code relative to the market we're serving. And let's see what happens. I have the dollar sign, and it is rounding appropriately after showing 2 decimals. So that is the currency format. The thing that's important to understand is even if that was, let's take this and show it again right next to it without the formatting. Okay, so 13.42 is rounded down for display. However, the actual value retains its precision. So any additional calculations I do are not going to lose precision because you rounded for the display purpose. Is that clear? It's sort of like in Excel. Excel, we can have it format as dollars, but it still remembers down to the tenths, the hundredths, the thousandths, the millionths of a penny, if that's the accuracy that you provided. So we don't lose precision. We just format it because, let's face it, we're not going to collect fractional cents from our customers. So having it round is what we want it to do in the formatting. If we had a specific reason that we wanted it to always round differently, if we wanted it to use bankers rounding, if we wanted it to round up, if we always wanted it to round down, there are other functions, like floor and ceiling and truncate and other things we could do to get the results that we want. They're a little less usual. Okay, so this is the more common thing. So having seen this much, can you bring it home and finish it, or shall we finish the exercise together? What do you say, Casey?
No, that's all I needed.
Okay. All right. So one of the things we need to do to get all the points then is to get rid of the select star and display only the fields that were specified by the specification, by the instructions, and just to revisit those. So that's the wrong. That's the other class. There we go. So number 13. Only unit price greater than $17 are to be included. So we also need to put a where clause in there, and which is it going to be? Greater than or equal to, or greater than sign? Greater than sign $17, and then you'll be there. Okay. Other questions?
I had one more on 15.
Okay.
I was having a little trouble. If you pull it up, I think it was a sale with any of the 3 letters, H, O, or T.
Right. Okay. So let's think about it. It says H, O, or T anywhere in the title in any order. Okay. Now, let's I had a great mentor in my master's program, Dr. Muhammad Ayati, and it took him for software engineering. And he would pound on the desk in front of me and say, Beck, complexity is merely the aggregation of simplicity. And it took me a while to get what he was trying to teach me. But what he was saying is when you are faced with a problem that is so complex that you can't just look at it and solve it, break it into smaller problems and then solve the smaller problems individually and then recombine them to give you the whole answer. So let's see how we would solve a simpler problem, like what if it just had H, okay? And let's not worry about the 27.5% off sale and whatnot. Let's just get, again, I like to start with select star from items. Okay, sort of my zen. Great. Okay. Now, I only want items that have H anywhere in the title. That's literally like H. What do I need to add?
Parentheses?
Not parentheses. What's the wild card? It's either going to be a percentage or it's going to be a star. Which is it for SQL Server?
I meant to say percentage.
There you go. Okay, so now H could be at the very front, H could be at the end, or H could be anywhere in there. And so there's an H, there's an H, there's an H. Okay, now I've solved it once. I need also this as part of the solution. There are all the ones with O's, right? And I also need this as part of the solution. Does this care where the T shows up?
No.
Does this care where the O shows up?
No.
Does this care where the H shows up?
No.
Now, look at my problem statement. Do I have to have all three, H and O and T?
No.
So if it only has, careful there, Casey, if it only has H, is that okay? Any item which contains,
Oh, all three of the letters. Okay.
so okay, but what if I had, let's think about that. So if I had a title that was H XXX O XXX T XXX, I want that one, right?
Mm-hmm.
What if I had O XXX H XXX T XXX? Do I want that one too?
Yeah.
Right. So as long as H, O, and T are present, I don't care what order. Okay. If I wanted them to be in a specific order, I could have done it like this, right?
Yeah.
As long as H precedes O precedes T, but that's not going to give me my, and there is one that qualifies, but what about the one that has T, O, H? Is there one like that? I don't know. Let's see. There is. Both are required. Okay, so I could either combine all these, but why make it more complicated? I actually had what I needed already there. I need this query and this query and this query. Now, if you're thinking fast on your feet, you'd say, oh, you can just take the union of those three, and we haven't studied the union operator. That's true. That would give you all that match, but I don't need to run three different queries and combine them. I just need to change my logic to combine the logic. So I also want,
comma.
it's going to be a Boolean conjunction.
Hmm.
But let's see what it's going to look like. Where this first is true, this second is true, the question becomes, do I want it to be and this is true, and this is true, or do I want it to be or this is true, or this is true? This is where we got to think. Let's go back to the original problem statement. All three of the letters have to be there, but they can be in any order. Is it true that I have to have an H and an O and a T? Yes. Yeah. Is it true that I have to have an H or O or T, that any one of them will satisfy? No. All three must be there. So which Boolean do I want?
And.
Let's see if that does the job. What did I have a semicolon floating where I don't want it. There you just homage to you, Ted. Okay, so this got H, O, and T, but did it also get T, H, and O? How could I tell? One way I could tell is monkey with it. Let's try the other combination. I think we did this one before. O, H, T. That gave us record 5. Did this one give us record 5? It did. Aha, so it's working. So is this the filter logic that we need, Casey?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Now don't run off and make that the whole solution, because what else did they want? They wanted 27.5% off. Okay. And just to remind everybody, 27.5% off means take 100% of X and subtract 27.5% of X. Now you could actually do the calculation that way, or what did our algebra teacher tell all of us? Combine like terms, right? Okay, so 100% less 27% is going to be 82.5%, right? Something like that, 72.5%, right? So 72.5%. So I don't care if you say 72.5. So if it's 72.5%, that's 0.725 times X. Or if you do it this way and say, X minus 0.275 times X, those two expressions are entirely equivalent. Either one will do. Is that clear? If that's not clear, I'll work through it a little bit more.
No, I understand.
Okay. All right, because that kind of spins some people, if they've been away from their algebra and some of their arithmetic for a couple of years, which is not uncommon in this class. So, okay, I'm happy to go back and refresh. But yeah, so you got a little bit more work to do, but that's the essence of it. Other questions, Casey?
That's all I had.
Ted?
I have no questions.
Okay. Well, if we've hit all the highlights, then I'll go ahead and end it there. Just a minute for a couple deep breaths. Anything else? Concerns about the class? Things you're enjoying, you want to see more of? Things I need to fix? Anything else?
No, I like your online lectures. They really help.
Good. I'm glad they're useful. And the other thing about those is, if there are things, I get questions during the week. if things come up and I go, oh, everybody would benefit from that, I will make additional videos, and I'm happy to do them, because a lot of times it's more easy to understand the stuff visually or sort of kinesthetically, where you can kind of get your hands on it. So I'm happy to create those materials if they're helpful, and if they're something that seems to be useful to a lot of students. I just make them a permanent part of the class. Last thing I'll remind everybody is that you can email me. You can post to the course Q&A. That's a great place if it's a common question, because then everybody will see it. You might even have another student that answers it before I see the question, which is great. You can message me through Canvas. I have office hours on campus, which for most online students is not ever where they want to be, but you can certainly reach me during those times. Come and drop in if you are on campus or want to come down. The other thing is, when I am not in my office, my telephone line at the office is forwarded during the hours of 9 a.m. to 8 p.m. Monday through Friday. And so if you call my office line, it will hunt down and find my cell phone, even if I'm out of the office. If I'm available, I'm happy to talk to you. If I'm teaching or in a meeting or something like that, then I will leave a message and I'll call you back as soon as I can. But I know that particularly for online students that are working at least one job and sometimes two or three, 5 hours in the office is really not anything like enough to make myself available to you. So there's other ways to reach me, and I want to be here to help when things come up.
Great.
So
Thank you.
Okay,
great.
thank you.
All right, Casey, Ted, have a great evening.
You too. Bye.
Bye now.